This time on Ask Rad Rat, we're figuring out if JeffWonSong actually does inward heel flips or not. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel all about skateboarding. On this series, Ask Rad Rat, you send in your questions and I answer them here on the channel. You can go to radratvideo.com to submit your own questions. I said that I was about to run out and my inbox was at 0, and you guys came through, and I got a pretty big batch, but I always need more. So send your questions there. All right, first question of the day is from Johnny B. He says, what are your thoughts on changing setups a lot? Like changing from deck sizes, if they're shaped, big trucks, small trucks, wheels, rails, no rails. I went through about a year of changing my setup every few months from a wide shaped deck with rails to a wide popsicle with no rails. Then I'm back to a skinnier deck with smaller trucks. I just like trying things to get out of my comfort zone. Then I go back to see how it feels. I am 42. I've been skating for 30 years, so it's fun to change it up here and there. I mean, I think that's a really good thing to do because I was stuck with the same size for a very long time. I skated a 7.5 for maybe 10 years. That was very common size at the time. I know it sounds tiny now, but that's what was really common. And then I jumped up to a 7.625, a difference of about that much. And it made a difference because the board was really small for my shoe size. Like my toes and heels would hang off all the time, and my feet would get sore. So I stepped up a little bit, and then I stepped up to a 7.75. That was considered kind of big at the time. And then I stopped. I skated 7.75 for another 10 years after that point. And now my current board is a 9.8, a giant old school style board, and I love it. And I have so much fun. I haven't had as much fun on a skateboard in a long time. And I've relearned most of my tricks. There are a couple that are a little bit hard. You can't flip quite as quickly, but I can still do most of the stuff, and I'm just having a lot of fun on it. And for me, I'm kind of past the point of trying to get a really good trick on camera. I don't care if my catch isn't as good on the board because it's so big that the board flips extra slow. I just don't care. If it was fun to do it, I'm into it. So yeah, I like that board now. When that is done and I need something else, I'm going to try something totally different. I think that's a really cool thing to do. If you're trying to build consistency and like build your career, it makes more sense to find what you're good with and stick to it. But if you're just having fun, have fun, you know, get new stuff. I think that's a good idea. All right, the next question is from Cellophane Rapper. He says, what tech do you use to convert high 8 and mini DV tapes to digital? I have boxes of tapes with amazing skating of me and my friends from back in the day. What would you recommend? I use PC, by the way. Okay, so what you're going to need is a capture card that has an input that is the same as the output on your camera. So what I used to have with my old camera, it had an S video cable. And so I bought a capture card that had that in, and so you could just you could play it on the camera, hit record on your computer, and you would be good. Capture cards are pretty easy to find because people use them to record old school games. So whatever outputs your camera has are going to be pretty common for some old game system. So somebody will have a capture card that can accept that. It'll probably come with its own software to do the capturing from, so that should be pretty easy to do. If you don't have your old cameras, you'll probably have to find a service to send that stuff out to. I know it's not going to be that easy to find something that can play those tapes, but if you still have the cameras, it should be pretty easy. You should be able to get a capture card, probably about $100 or so should do you just fine for that. All right. The last question of the day is from Nick. He says, has anyone asked you about JeffWonSong's inward heel flips yet? Feels weird telling someone else what the trick they did was, but there have been some clips of him doing them recently where it's hard to determine for me, even in YouTube slow-mo, if it's a pressure or not. And I feel like a total whiner baby hater not just taking his word for it. His back foot isn't near the pocket where you'd expect, but it is on that side of the board, while his front foot starts where you'd expect, but seems to either barely flick or not flick at all from some angles. Maybe he's popping the board almost vertical, like an impossible or a monster flip, before throwing it the rest of the way with his front foot, in which case, isn't that just an inward heel done strangely? No clue. Hope to hear back. Okay, I know he gets this in his comments when he posts stuff a lot about how his inward heel flips look like they are pressure flips, and people will comment and be like, nice pressure flip, when the caption says inward heel flip. And people will debate whether he knows what he's doing or not. So there are three different ways to make the board do an inward heel flip type flip. Two styles of inward heel flips, and then the pressure flip. So let's look at those three different ways, and then we'll take a look at his, and we'll see which one he's doing. So the traditional style of inward heel flip is the way that I learned how to do them. So the problem with the inward heel flip is that when you flick your heel outward, the board is going to go the same way. So you have to clear the nose somehow. So the classic way, you flick off the nose and you flick extra far, and so the board kind of passes behind your heel. And that's the way I learned them back in the day. A few years back, I was going to do a trick tip for him, and I realized I couldn't do them rolling forward, and I wasn't that good at them anymore going fakie, but I at least have some clips so you can see how your front foot passes the nose, and the nose kind of goes behind it. So that's the first style. That one's a pretty classic way. And then let's look at JeffWonSong. So this is in the video second to none. And you can see he pops the board out in front of him, and then he uses the tip of his toe to flick it down and then pulls it back. So instead of trying to flick out past the nose, he pushes the board out, flicks backward, and then kind of steps and clears it up in the air like that. That way, to me, it feels more like a shove it late flip, kind of. You know, like for that one, for a pop shove, like you do it this way, and then you kind of flip afterward, right? And if you wait a little bit less and a little bit less, eventually, instead of doing a shove it late flip, your foot doesn't leave the board. And I can get how that would work. I haven't learned it that way. It's kind of weird to me, but you can flip with the tip of your toe on the heel side. And do it as the board starts to spin. So that is the way that he does it. And then let's look at pressure flips. So with these, the foot position is pretty specific. Your foot has to be, your back toe has to be on the very edge of the tail. Because as you pop the board will start to flip instantly. So you can see that too. This is from a trick tip I did as well. Right as the wheels start to leave the ground, the board starts to flip instantly, and you can see the back foot, your toe kind of pokes in. Your front foot just has to get way up out of the way, and then your back foot comes up afterward, and then you can catch it and land it from there. So those are the three different ways to make the board do an inward heel flip motion. So what about Jeff? So this is Jeff from his KFD Pro Model debut video at 1 minute and 38 or so. So if you look at the way that his feet are placed there, his back foot is not on the corner of the tail. It's not on the very edge here where you would need it to pop it for a pressure flip. It's more just on the back. Front foot, not very important for a pressure flip, but mine normally ends up on the heel side because you have all that pressure on the toe side. And if you have both feet on the heel side, you turn, right? So you have to have your front foot more on the heel side. His is not. His is more toes hanging off. Now he pops the board pretty much straight. The board doesn't start to flip instantly. You know, as the wheels start to leave the ground, it doesn't instantly start to flip like it does for a pressure flip. And look closely at his front toe. You can see it kind of dip down. Like I said, this one can feel kind of like a pop shove it late flip because you start to go and then you flick down. And that's kind of how it looks like he's doing it. The board starts to spin, his front toe dips down and then backs up. And the board flips out here, he waits for it to clear, and then he steps back on top of it. So it looks like it's a legitimate inward heel flip, it's just maybe not the standard style. And it's also an interesting thing too, because no one really debates the nollie ones. You know, there's a couple in this part too, a plain one here, then there's a 361 as well. And that one, it's very clear that his back foot is doing the flipping. So, you know, it's just the way that he puts his feet, his style of it is a little bit non-standard, but he does it like JeffWonSong, which is probably a coincidence. I doubt he learned it that way just to be like him, but hey, I don't know, maybe he did. So yeah, I'm sure that Jeff is actually doing an inward heel flip and not a pressure flip. So if you are the guy in his comments always saying nice pressure flip, you can stop. It is an inward heel flip. So that's it for today. Again, if you have questions of your own, go to radratvideo.com and submit them there with the form on the homepage, and I will talk to you later. Thanks for hanging out.